So this is basically lesson 2 in your book. Just a quick explanation of basically what each of these things is asking you to do. So if you look at page 96, and you can pause as everyone goes to page 96, you're going to see at the top of the page, there's a table that shows you the number of cases and the number of paper towels that each case has. And it's an already filled out table, but in this lesson, you're going to have to use a part of a table and fill out the rest of it. Now, just a reminder that if there's in one case of paper towels, there's 12. There's no way that you'd be adding. So when you get 3 cases, there's no addition. So just a reminder, we talked about this when we were doing scale factors. There's no adding, because just because you're adding 2 cases doesn't mean you're only going to be adding 2 paper towels. That doesn't make any sense. If there's 12 in 1, it's not like there'd only be 14 in 3. So we're never going to be adding. But there are many different ways that you can see a relationship in a table. One way is going across. So let me go ahead and erase this so that I can write on this. That is not what I wanted to do, huh? So I just want to clear annotations. All right, so one way is you can go across. You can ask yourself, how do I go from cases to number of paper towels? So, what are you multiplying by? In this case, it wouldn't be division because it's getting bigger. Now, if you can't figure it out, you can always take this number and divide this number, like 36 divided by 3, or 12 divided by 1. But either way, you're going to get an answer of 12. So that shows you across every single time you're multiplying by 12. That kind of mean, well, it doesn't kind of mean. It means that every time you have a case, there's 12 paper towels. So if I told you there were 7 cases, you could just multiply by 12 and get the new number of paper towels. So that's one way. You can always go across. But the cool thing is you can also go up and down. So if you notice, for example, that it goes from 1 to 3 this way, you could also ask yourself, what are you multiplying by? And in this case, what times 1 gets you 3? Times 3. Well, you're going to notice if you do the same thing on this side, times 3, 12 times 3, you would get 36. So you can either go across or you can go down. The same thing works if you skip a row. So let's say you're asking yourself, how do I go from 12? Oops, sorry about that. How do I go from, I did it again, I'm sorry. How do you go from 12 to 60? Well, if you're not sure, you can always take the bigger number and divide the smaller number. 60 divided by 12, and you will get 5. So that means you're multiplying by 5. 12 times 5 is 60. So if you do a jump down here, you're going to notice that 1 times 5 is 5. So you can go across or you can go up and down to see the relationship between the 2 things that we're talking about. In this case, it's cases and number of towels. All right? So this is on page 96 of your workbook. You're going to see there's some blanks. Okay? There's blanks right here and here. Okay? So this one we're going to kind of do together. First of all, can you go across, and can anyone tell me what are we multiplying to go across? Take a second. Can anyone figure that out? What are we multiplying to go across? Hopefully, if you pause the video, you can take a guess. What times 2 gets you 6? Well, times 3. So going across is times 3, and that's going to take place throughout the entire chart. So right here, I could have said, to get this blank right here, what 10 times 3, I would know that if there's 10 cups of rice, it would serve 30 people. Now in the bottom one, I don't know this number, so I can't multiply by 3. So if you remember from our scale factor, you go the other way. So instead of multiplying by 3, since I already have this number and I want to go backwards, I can actually divide by 3. And when I do, here's my calculator, 45 divided by 3. You're going to get 15. You can see it right here, 15. So that means that this must be 15. And guess what? 15 times 3 is 45. Now let's pretend for a second that you didn't do it that way. You didn't want to do it that way. You wanted to do it a different way. So I'm going to erase this. Pretend we didn't know this yet. Pretend we didn't go across at all. Now again, you could have just gone across. I'm just showing you a different way to get the answer. So in this problem, let's say we wanted to go a different way. So instead of going across, let's say I wanted to do a little bit of a a jump. So in order to get this number right here, I'm going to use another row and I'm going to go up and down. So I'm going to use, I know that I can get from 2 to 10. So I'm going to draw an arrow. Because if there's 2 cups of rice and it serves 6 people, I could ask myself, what am I multiplying up and down? So 2 times what gets me 10? 2 times 5 gets me 10. So I'm going to take the row that I was working with. In this case, it's a 6. I'm using the 2, so I have to use the 6. And I'm going to multiply that same thing times 5. And that will get you the same thing we got before, 30. 6 times 5 is 30. Well, now, let's see. Do I know anything that can get me 45? So I'm going to look at this row right here. Can I get 45? And I noticed that there's a 9 there already. Now, again, you didn't have to do it this way. We did it the other way before. But what times 9 gets me 45? So if you're not sure, you can do 45 divided by 9. I remember that something times 9 gets me 45. But if I do 45 divided by 9, or if I just ask myself what times 9 gets me 45, you'll get an answer of 5. So 9 times 5 is 45. So if I go from this row, in this case it's a 3, and I multiply times 5, just like I did over here, and this is just a coincidence, by the way. It's not always the same number. It just so happens it's the same number here. But 3 times 5 will get me that same answer I got before, 15. So now let's see if you guys can do one on your own, okay? If you look at page 97, and I'm going to put in the numbers. You already have them, but I'll put in the numbers here. And you could go ahead and pause the video and see if anyone could figure out the missing part. So we know that if you have served 6 spring rolls, there'll be 3 people that will be able to eat it. But we want to know, what about a 30 spring rolls? We don't know how many number of people that will serve. We don't know 40. And we don't know if there were 28 people, how many spring rolls should we order? So let's take a second. Maybe you guys will figure this out. I'll go through this. But go ahead and see if you can figure this out. Pause the video. Okay. So the way I did this, well, there's a couple different ways you can do this. I will show you one way that you can figure this out. Actually, you know what? I'll do it both ways. So right here, I asked myself, how do I go from 6 to 3? And it's either got to be multiplication or division. Well, it's getting smaller, so I'm thinking it's division. So what am I dividing by? 6 divided by what gets me 3? Now, 6 divided by 2 gets me 3. That tells me right now in this chart, this table, you're dividing by 2. So to get this answer, if there are 30 spring rolls, I can just divide by 2. 30 divided by 2 is 15. 30 divided by 2 is 15. All right, so I already got one of the answers. Now, let's pretend I didn't want to do it that way. And by the way, you could do that for the whole chart. That's probably the easiest way. Like I would just take 40 and divide by 2. And then for the 28, instead of dividing by 2, I would multiply by 2. But let's just pretend you didn't want to do it that way. And after you got that, from the beginning, let's say you wanted to do it a different way. Okay, so I do notice that I can go from 6 to 30 by multiplying by 5. So I could also take this 3 and multiply it by 5. And 3 times 5 gets you that same answer of 15. All right? So let's say, honestly, the easiest way for this one would just to be notice that you're dividing by 2. So this would be 20. And this way, if you multiply by 2 going the other way, it would be 56. 28 times 2 is 56. And feel free to use your calculator. One thing I can do to just double check that, and I'm going to show you with my calculator, is I could ask myself, what am I multiplying by 20 to get to 28? So I'm going to do 28 divided by 20, because that's how we're going to find out what we're multiplying by. And you get 1.4. So technically, to go from this 20 to this 28, you're doing times 1 4/10. So if I took 40 and multiplied by 1.4, you could try it on your calculator, but I promise you, you'll get 56. So again, you can go across or you can go up or down. Let's try one more. Okay. Can you guys fill in this row? Okay. See if you could do it. Okay. You have all the tools. This is a little bit tricky. I might decide, instead of doing this one first, I might try to do this one first. But this is the amount of honey and flour in the recipe. So I know if I use 8 I don't know, this is on page 97 too. Teaspoons of honey, you would use 10 cups of flour. So try to figure this one out. See if you can go across. I actually, if you pause the video and then when you unpause, I'll go over the answer and show you how I did it and see if it makes sense. But maybe take some time and try this on your own. Okay. So for this one, the first thing I noticed was I can go from 10 to 20 by multiplying by 2. So that helped me get this one right away. So I'm going to say times 2. 8 times 2 is 16. I already filled out part of my table. Right? Now, it's really, I can't figure out, I mean, I could try, you can divide if you wanted to. Oops, sorry. You can, I'm going to erase this so that you don't get confused with the other stuff. All right. So one thing I could do is I can say, what am I multiplying 8 by to get to 20? And I could figure that out by doing 20 divided by 8. But I'm going to do it a different way. I'm going to do this a different way. That way it would absolutely work. But I'm going to go across. Just no reason. Just feel like this would be a good way to go across. So I'm going to ask myself, what do I multiply 8 by to get to 10? And if I want to know what I multiply 8 by to get to 10, I'm going to take the 10, the new one, and divide by 8. And trust me, well, I could even show you. When you do 10, let me clear this. When you do 10 divided by 8, I did negative 8 by mistake, you get 1.25. That means if you go across, you're multiplying by 1.25. Well, that's going to help me fill out the rest of the table because I can now multiply 20 times 1.25. 1.25. And you get an answer of 25. Boom, done. Now I know if you use part 20 honey, you got to use 25 flour. Notice, by the way, that the difference between honey and flour in this row is 5. The difference between the honey and the flour in this row is 2. That doesn't mean it's any different. This is actually going to taste the same because you're multiplying and dividing. This recipe is going to be perfect as long as you're multiplying or dividing and using this same 1.25. We're going to talk about this later, but this is called proportional. It's a proportional relationship. And in this case, proportional means it's going to taste the same. So now I'm going to do 13 times 1.25. And you get 16.25. And we already filled out this row, so now we're done with the chart. I try one more. And remember, I'll post this video to the help videos. So if you want to see this again, this will be right under the help videos. Oh, kidding. I don't have another one for you guys to do. So actually, let's do one more. Okay, so if you look on page 98, there's the number of quarters. This again is on page 98. And then you have number of dimes. Now, you want to make this proportional. So we don't know how many dimes there are for 1 quarter. We don't know how many dimes are there for 1 quarter. We know when there are 4 quarters, there were 10 dimes. Oh, I see a relationship automatically. I could figure out what I'm multiplying by, but I'm not going to. That's the only hint I'll give you. We know when there's 6 quarters, we don't know how many dimes there are, and we don't know how many dimes there are when there are 14 quarters. Okay, so you could, if you wanted to, figure out what you were pause the video, see if you can do it on your own. And now that you're done, I could have gone across. I could have figured out what times 4 gets me 10. But instead, an easier way is I noticed that I have 1 quarter and I'm trying to get to 4 quarters. Well, that would just be times 4. Well, if I'm multiplying 4 this way, that would mean I'm also multiplying 4 this way, but I already have this answer. So basically, if I want to go backwards, instead of multiplying by 4, I'm going to divide by 4. 10 divided by 4. Well, you're just going to have to trust me on this. Is 2.5. Wait, is it 2.5? Yeah, 10 divided by 4 is, 10 divided by 4 is 2.5. Now, that doesn't really make sense. Like, how can you have, 2.5 dimes? Doesn't really make sense, but that's the only way it would make it proportional. Now, in this case, what times 1 gets me 6? So I'm going to forget the times 4, and I'm going to go from the first row all the way to the third row. Well, 1 times 6. Whenever you have a 1, it's pretty easy because anything times itself is what you, like 1 times anything is whatever you're multiplying the 1 by. So 1 times 6 is 6. So I'm going to take this 2.5 now, and multiply by 6. 2.5 times 6 is 15. That means that if I want to keep this the same, if I have 6 quarters, I better have 15 dimes. That means it would be 1 quarter for every 2.5 dimes. And last, what times 1 gets me 14? Notice, I know there's a lot of writing here, but let me use a different color just so you don't get confused. I'm going from the beginning now all the way to the end, and I'm asking myself, what times 1 gets me 14? Again, you could have gone across, but I feel like this way is easier because I know 1 times 14 is 14, and I'm going to take this 2.5 and multiply by that same 14. 2.5, 2.5 times 14 gets me 35. And that is how you would get that one. I hope that helps. Please remember, I'm going to post this on to our unit. Well, actually, it's going to be under our unit 2 help videos now. So please take a look at this video when you get a chance.